All right, so I've shown you sawing. Now I need to show you a different aspect of sawing, which is piercing. Piercing is when you cut out a design within another shape without cutting through from the outside. So take, for example, this little guy. You know, I didn't cut in from the outside to cut him out. So that's a piercing. This shape, this inside is going to be pierced out. And then I'm going to cut out the outside. In my personal experience, it's easiest to pierce out the insides and then cut out the outside. And that's simply because you have more to hold on to. You know, as I cut all of this out, I've got all this extra metal around here to hold on to so that my fingers are not in front of the saw blade. But for example, if I had this little piece of metal and I was trying to cut a shape out of it, I just don't have that much space to hold on to. So I'm gonna struggle a lot more to cut it without the metal moving. But if I had cut the shape out first, like I did on this, and then cut the shape out, the outer shape, it's a lot easier. I mean, you just saw that video. I was able to hold on to all of that excess metal. Let's go over quick drilling of holes. So first thing you need to do is make a depression for the drill bit to sit in. Otherwise, it'll skate all over the place and your hole might not end up where you want, which for piercing is not super important, but you don't want it to end up cutting into your design at all. So if you're in the studio, we have some of these. This is called a center punch. It kind of looks like a pencil, and it comes to a relatively fine point. You will go to an anvil and place this on your metal and hit it with a hammer. I'm not at the studio, and while I do have the center punch for the demo, I don't normally have a center punch here. So what I use when I'm here at home, for those of you that might need to do this not in the studio, I have a dart. They come in very handy. And then I don't have an anvil here, but I have this little steel block. It's a lot heavier than it looks. It was not very expensive. And I use this because I don't do a lot of heavy hammering. And it works well for rivets and for things such as this. So I take my metal, put it on the block, put my dart, and I'm just going right for the center because I just need a place to put my drill bit through. And then bink, and there we have it. Again, you're not trying to put a hole all the way through. You're just trying to make a little depression for the drill bit to sit in so that you know exactly where that hole is going to go. If you are in the studio, you want to hit the center punch with our ugly hammer. We have a hammer like this in the studio that's all dinged up. It's full of little divots, and it's specially for hitting the center punch because it's every time you hit this, which is steel, it's going to make marks in this steel. So we just use the same hammer that's already beat up for that. All right, I guess I need to do one here. So in this design, I've got several places where I'm going to cut out. This is going to come out, this, maybe that, I'm not sure, so I'm going to leave that. So I'm actually going to have to do 3 because these don't connect. So again, tap, not trying to go all the way through. Tap, tap. That's it. It's nothing forceful at all. And you don't have to use a metal hammer, like a fancy hammer for that. You can use just a regular old hammer. And I mean, a dart works wonderfully. And you can get darts at Walmart for pretty cheap. All right, the next thing we need to talk about are drill bits. It really doesn't matter what size drill bit you use for this. I would go for a nice middle of the road size one. If you're in the studio, use size 55 or 60 because that's what we have out for you guys. They work fine. If you're at home, use whatever smallish one you can get. You don't want to drill a hole. Let's see if I can draw this with a Sharpie. So I put the divots here in the middle. Let me mark them so you can see. Okay, the divots are here on these dots. If I drilled a hole on the line with a big drill bit, you see how that hole cuts into my metal that I'm going to keep? I wouldn't want that. So, you know, you want to make sure that whatever drill bit you're using is not so big that it's going to take up more space than you want. Otherwise, it does not matter what size drill bit you use. If you're at the studio, you will go over to our drill press, which is set up to drill perfect 90-degree angles straight down. But I don't have one of those at home. You're not going to have one of those at home. So if you're at home, and again, because we're not doing anything but using this to put the saw blade through, it doesn't matter if it's a completely 90-degree angle or not. It will matter when it comes to rivets and drilling holes for rivets, but for this is a flex shaft. It's especially designed for jewelry. It's basically like a Dremel, but it has this long hose on the end and a motor's back here behind the camera. And that cuts down on the vibrations. You can use a Dremel for this. That's fine. I would not recommend using a drill gun because they're just too powerful and they're big and it's really hard to hold on to the metal and use that and not hurt yourself. So I've been there, I've tried it. That's just not a great option. So safety glasses. This is a rotary tool. This spins. So I'm fortunate in that mine has this cover to keep the spinning parts covered, but the ones in the studio do not. So hair pulled back, making sure that there's no necklaces or anything. I'm going to try to put it as straight vertically as I can, but you know, if I'm a little off, it's not a huge deal. I've chosen just a middle of the road. I think this is the size 57, but that's not important. The flex shaft has a pedal down here I hit with my foot and it spins. See that? It also makes the light dim. I'm going to shoot for a speed about like that. The flex shaft can go a lot higher like that, but that's not what I'm going for. So use your ears, listen to it for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to hold my fingers out of the way, put the drill bit in the divot I made, and just hit the gas. I apply a little bit of pressure, not a lot. This is small and fragile. If you let up on the gas, it will get stuck and it will break. So keep the speed consistent throughout. Don't press too hard, just a little bit. So here we go again. If you have a very small piece and you're worried about your fingers, or if it's getting too hot, which happens sometimes, we have these things called ring clamps. And what you can do is put your piece in it, put the wedge in, and you can use that to hold it so your fingers are out of the way. And then also if it's getting hot, your fingers won't be affected. And there we have it. Let me do the other one. All right. So again, I would not drill holes this way if I was needing any sort of accuracy. All right, so I've got my saw blade part way in, so I've already put it in the top here, but I've left the bottom open so that I can thread the saw blade through the hole. Design goes toward the top of the saw blade. So you put it on, slide it all the way to the top, and then press it in just like you did before. Tighten it up. And there we have it. Look. So now we have a design with a saw blade going through it, and we cut the same way we did before. To clear the dust, by just ever so slightly blowing on the piece while I saw, it helps keep the dust from blocking my line. And this one must have had a little glue on the outside. Okay, so I'm in the corner. Just gonna go up and down until there's no tension on the blade. And then just real slow, not in a rush. Okay, and that's where I want it. Sometimes you do kind of a combo, like turning the saw a little and turning the metal a little. You'll find out what works for you. It just takes practice. Again, my hand is not tight. I'm thinking about that cute little kitten and all of her fragile organs and bones, and I'm trying to hold the saw gently as if I'm holding her. So I want this point to be really sharp, so the easiest thing to do is go back down toward the hole. And that way I can start fresh, going right into it from here. So sometimes when you're starting, you do want an angle, and you put the saw here and you go against the points. That's called back sawing, and it makes like a little groove. And then you can saw properly. So it gets a little hard to hold on to, but I'm putting my finger back here and holding it like that. Okay, when I get down here to this bottom, I want that to be really nice and pointy too. I could go up and down and turn, but really what I'd rather do is scoot back just a little and turn toward, go up and down here and turn toward what I've already cut out. And that way I can go in from the other side and get a real nice point there. So again, you kind of start slow at an angle so you can make sure you get the blade right where you want it. And then you go straight up and down. Every time I get close to the end, even when I was cutting into that excess, I go right into the inside of my bench pen. Go nice and slow because I don't want to overshoot and end up nicking the other side of this point. So just go real slow, and then I can actually just clean that up. There we go. And then to get it out, there we go. I press on it and loosen the knob, and then I can take my piece off. One way you can check your piercing, because it looks great right now, but I've got that nice bold computer printed line on there. So one of the ways that I check it is I flip it over, and that gives you an accurate view of what the shape really looks like. Because sometimes it can look like you did a great job, but the darkness of the line is tricking your brain into thinking that that's the saw line. So I'm going to continue sawing. If you think you understand, feel free to stop the video here. For those that need a little bit more, keep watching. All right, gonna work on this one now. So again, thread it through the hole, design up. Slide all the way to the top. Press in, tighten up. Piercing and sawing are things that I find extremely relaxing. I put on an audiobook or some music and I just have at it. So when I get into these really detailed areas, I just go nice and slow. Okay, don't want to nick the other side of this design, so I'm going right into the bench pin. Really going slow here. Alright, here it comes. Just for inquisitive minds out there, this type of metal I'm using is bronze. Okay, so I push in, undo the bottom, take it off, rethread it. It's really hard to do this where the camera can see. If ever you find that your saw blade is stuck, which happens sometimes, the easiest thing to do is take your hand off, slowly just lift up, and you see how the metal kind of wiggles? That's it's working its way out, and once it's mostly slowed down, just set it back down, and you'll be good to go again. Just make sure you give it time to slow down. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Bow, 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 wow. Okay, so I'm getting close to the end. I really want to make sure I don't nick into the design that I'm keeping, so real slow. Okay, it's tempting to just undo this bottom part and let it spring out, but that is not the proper way to do things. It's unpredictable that way. You don't know, you know, what could happen. The blade could break, or it could fling your piece off and onto the floor, which, if you've done a very intricate piercing, could result in bending your piece, which is not fun at all. So take the time, take the saw blade off properly.